edge of an oil slick more than 100 miles long is less than 3 miles away from land from the mouth of America's River from the Pasalutra Wildlife Reserve, one of Louisiana's fragile marshland ecosystems. But in our third story tonight, it's already made an impact farther away in Washington. The president today unleashing the federal government to respond, and even though Tea Partiers don't seem to mind this government bailout, Mr. Obama assured taxpayers private industry will be picking up this tab too.
While BP is ultimately responsible for funding the cost of response and cleanup operations, my administration will continue to use every single available resource at our disposal, including potentially the Department of Defense.
Triggered by the explosion and sinking of a Gulf rig more than a week ago, the spill itself from the pipe that once connected the rig to the well almost 1 mile down is now gushing 5 times faster, says the government, than BP first claimed, pouring 210,000 gallons into the Gulf every day, putting it on pace to surpass by next week the milestone 1969 spill off Santa Barbara, California, putting Mr. Obama on the defensive. The White House hinting it could reconsider plans to expand offshore drilling. As Huffington Post reports, the administration gave BP some exemptions for this rig based on BP estimates of a worst-case scenario that was better than this spill. And that BP executives pushed back against new rules last September, claiming the industry's current safety and environmental statistics demonstrate that the voluntary programs have been and continue to be very successful. And though BP is now considering cleanup methods never tested this deep, including underwater chemical dispersants and a 100-ton steel dome. Earlier this month, Sarah Palin told Republicans in New Orleans no more study is needed to drill for new oil in the Gulf.
We can produce it safely and responsibly. We don't need more studies. We need more action, because energy produced in America is security for America, and it is jobs for American workers, jobs that can't be outsourced. Let's drill, baby, drill, not stall, baby, stall.
That woman is an idiot. Let's bring in Joe Rome, Senior Fellow at the Center for American Progress, the editor of climateprogress.org, and the author of Straight Up. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me, Keith.
BP originally said it could handle a spill by itself. It originally said it would just be 1,000 barrels a day. How has that affected this whole thing, that what they said?
Yeah, well, BP gave us, they said, trust us. And they said they gave us a lowball estimate for the spill rate and left everyone with the impression that they could take care of it themselves. I think, thankfully, the Obama administration didn't trust them. NOAA did their own calculation and realized that this thing, spill rate, was 5 times what BP said. It's 200,000 gallons a day. And so Obama declared all hands on deck. And, he sent out the Coast Guard and EPA and Interior. But I think BP's initial reaction, has made this mess a lot tougher to clean up.
The cause of the explosion is yet to be determined. The cause of the safety valve not engaging fully yet to be determined. But does that mean it's too early to determine whether or not regulation was an issue here?
Well, you had the quote from Palin. Everyone said this is clean, this is safe. The fact of the matter is that BP was not using the latest technology. Brazil requires this backup cutoff switch that BP was not using. The fact of the matter is that BP has fought tougher regulations. They want the voluntary self-regulation, trust me approach. Obviously, that doesn't work. But, I don't think this should come as a big surprise. For 8 years, this country was led by 2 oil guys, 2 fossil fuel guys. They looked the other way. They didn't regulate tough. So we've had the worst mine disaster in decades. We had just had another mine disaster. Now we've had a big oil disaster. I don't think it's a coincidence.
And this whole press to get past regulation is summarized by Ms. Palin's really sort of, I can't quite describe what kind of misunderstanding she has of this situation, but it is so simplistic as to be maddening. 9th of April, she said in New Orleans, it's perfectly safe to drill in the Gulf. 11 days later, 11 people are missing and presumed dead, and now we have this situation at 20 days later. Yeah. How is that energy credentially naivete-y thing working out for her?
Yeah, well, Palin, you know, she said she was an expert on foreign policy because she could see Russia from her home. If she'd have looked in the other direction, she'd have seen Prince William Sound, where the Exxon Valdez spilled all that oil and, you know, caused an environmental disaster. Well, this BP spill, if it keeps up at the current rate in 50 days, it will be worse than the Exxon Valdez. And I spoke to a friend of mine who was a 20-year Coast Guard veteran, and he said these well blowouts, they can take months to cap, and that this oil is going to percolate and cause devastation to, you know, fish. I think we all remember the Exxon Valdez pictures of the oil-covered shores and birds and fish. So, you know, I think we believed people when they said you can drill clean and safely in the Gulf, but I think we've now learned otherwise.
Very briefly, is this going to change the Obama administration's point of view on this subject?
Well, I think the Obama administration, you know, this is going to go on for a while. I think this is going to change the Obama administration position. The good news is, just this week they announced, you know, the first offshore wind project off of Cape Cod. They've announced the biggest fuel economy standards. So they've always had an approach that was aimed on clean energy, and I think it's the clean, safe energy of the 21st century that never runs out, which is where the future lies.
Joe Rome with the Center for American Progress. Great, thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me, Keith.